Okay, we are going to quickly kind of go over your answers for the soapstone, which was technically your first time practicing a soapstone by yourself. And you have already gone through the article and have highlighted evidence that would match and support your answer with the appropriate assigned color. So, for example, the subject was supposed to be yellow, so you needed to use the yellow highlighter to underline evidence in the article that showed and proved the answer that you wrote down. Remember that when we talked about your answer sheet, that the answer is the same thing as analysis, and your evidence is going to support your answer. And that your answer was always going to be in your own words here, and that the evidence is quoting the text, but I decided to let you highlight instead. But if you had to fill out the whole thing, then you would know that this is being paraphrased and this is definitely being quoted from the text. Okay, so let's take a look at what your first answer was for subject. So for the subject one, I had that American people and companies are trashing the earth. Okay, so remember, this is in my own words. So hopefully in yours, you have something about America being trashed. America is littering is poisoning the earth and it's becoming worse, something like that. And, and the evidence that I chose to support that, I think it might be easier if I show you in the article, was down here. Hopefully you highlighted some stuff yellow. But I highlighted throwing things out is the American way, kind of the subject. You can see down here that I found another subject, that we are running out of places to throw things, so things that we're throwing away are poisoning the earth. That definitely supports it. So those were just a couple of things that I highlighted yellow that supports that we are really trashing America in general. Okay. The next answer that I had was for the occasion. What may have promoted the author to write this piece? What led to its publication? What was happening that made this Rooney guy feel like he needed to write it? I felt that Rooney was acknowledging that he is just as guilty as other Americans of needlessly, following the pattern of buying and throwing away, that it is not done, that it's done carelessly. So something that I found that supported the reason for why Rooney wrote this was anything in pink, because that's the assigned color. There's something satisfying about discarding almost anything. So when you declutter your house and you clean up and you throw away all this stuff, he's trying to say that he likes that it feels good when you clean up. So I picked that. I also picked down here, I picked that that prosperity in the United States is based on using things up as fast as we can and then throwing away what's left and then buying new ones. We throw away, we buy a new one, we throw away, we buy a new one. So that is that is the problem why we are trashing America. We are trashing America, there's your subject. But the reason for writing this is that he's bringing attention, and he's including himself, that we are a throwaway society, and it's very wasteful, and it's starting to add up. So that is what I picked for my evidence for occasion. All right, moving on. Painlessly here, let's go on to audience. So the audience one is, what assumptions can you make about the audience? Who was this document created for? Who do you think Rooney wrote this for? Well, I kind of really just assumed it was Americans in general. But then when I took a closer look at the article, I decided that I was going to include companies that might buy all of the chemical products, because he talked a big part of the article at some point, and I'll show you in a minute here, was he definitely talked about people using chemicals from like Lowe's and stuff. So that's great support. Also, hello, the title, America, I decided to use that as an example for audience because it's obviously towards Americans. I mean, he's not talking to anybody who lives in Mexico right now. And then I used the one right down here. We don't know how to fix anything. This is directed towards people who, hey, my lamp is broken. It was a $12 lamp that I got from Home Depot. It's broken. I'm throwing it away and I'll go buy a new one because it's going to take a lot more work for me to have to take it somewhere to get it fixed because I don't know how to fix it. So that's kind of the stuff he's talking about. So I thought that would be a really good example. And I think I had some on the other page. I had some of the manufacturers. So this could be directed towards an audience dealing with the problem is staggering. When he talks about going, here it is. When he talks about going to the hardware store or Sears, and he sees all the shelves of poison, and so anybody who works at a Sears or is buying all these poison products, I think it's directed towards them as well as just in general of Americans. Okay, purpose. For purpose, what is the speaker's purpose? What seems to be the emotional state of the speaker? How is the speaker trying to spark a reaction in the audience? How is this document supposed to make you feel? So I think the purpose that Rooney is doing here is that he was trying to convince us that wasteful Americans, that our trash is kind of becoming a problem. I think his purpose was to, in a light way, because at times he was kind of funny. His tone was humorous at times, but still being quite serious, that we're running out of space for us to be so wasteful. That each time I throw a lamp away, because I'm just going to throw it away and go buy another one, that mindset is not healthy, and we've now created a pretty big problem with how we are going to fix this problem, because we're running out of land to throw all of this stuff on it. All right. Evidence. So the color is blue, and I used, the first thing that I used was right down here where you see the trouble with throwing things away is that we really don't have an away left. I felt that definitely was going to support the purpose of Rooney writing this. I also found down at the bottom, as you can see here, I also found, I can't move this little paper out of the way, there we go, purpose. I also found at the bottom, and will eventually poison all of us and all living things. That's a pretty good point he's trying to make there, that if we keep throwing everything away, we are going to end up not only poisoning ourselves, but also pretty much all living things. So that is kind of a scary and a very good reason for him to write this paper. So that was a good purpose example. I found another purpose on the back. How long will it be before we trash the whole earth? So again, explaining where we're headed. I think his purpose was to convince us of our future if we don't stop this throwaway attitude that he seems to feel that we all have. Okay, if we go back after purpose is, I'm going to make this small, get it out of the way, go to the next one. After purpose is speaker. This is usually, I think, the easiest one, I gotta be honest with you. When I fill these out, I usually do the speaker first, because it's the author. Gotta figure out who wrote it. And I also kind of talk about what bias can be inferred. Is the speaker reliable? You know, once you figure out who the author is, you're really not quite done, because you have to look to see if there's any bias, and is the speaker reliable. So Rooney cares, this is my answer. Rooney cares about the future of our earth and wants us to change our culture's wasteful ways and our relationship with the planet. I really believe that he wanted us to change our minds about how we are a throwaway society. He wants us to know that he relates to his audience. He candidly admits that he has also been guilty of this throwing away behavior that's now destructive. So ways that I can prove this, if I go back to the article, is I've noticed some things kind of in orange here. I like to always read about the author. He was a television commentator on the program 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes is a very credible, a very reliable source. The fact that he worked for 60 Minutes makes me want to believe him more than I would some random name that did not have any information about the author. He wrote more than 800 essays, which he's presented on television in the national newspaper column. His essays, which are sometimes humorous and sometimes controversial, earned him 3 Emmy Awards. So his ability to be serious yet also make light of it is why he is winning awards. So anyways, it's always good to read that if you have that, because that helps you find the evidence. So of course, I'm pointing out the speaker here, that every single time I see the word I, me, my, I know that's my speaker. I know that his name is Andrew Rooney because it says so right here. And like I've mentioned several times before, you could also, for evidence, you could have highlighted anything up there. On the next, on the next page, I found a few other things. Just really whenever I saw I knew I was identifying the speaker. So it's not really hard when it's first person to find the speaker, especially when it is so clear here. This is such an added bonus, and that doesn't always happen. So I appreciated this article including that because it really helps me fill that column about the speaker out. All right, our last one was about the tone, and the tone is always hard to find. You're looking for the attitude that the author has towards his subject, and that's hard to find evidence for. So when you want to look for the words that show how he feels about this, and it can change. An author can start off one way and then flip and change later in the piece of writing, or maybe he stays the same or she stays the same the entire article. In our particular situation here, as you can see in my answer, I believe that Rooney's tone shifts. It changes. He begins and ends his piece with a very flippant tone. It's intended to mirror his audience in different attitude toward the earth. Like he's trying to kind of relate to them and understand why they don't care. He's like, yeah, you know what? I used to not care either. And then at that point, when he brings his audience in, he then kind of flips it and gets a little serious because he's trying to prove a point here that if we don't stop this, this silly behavior of ours and start thinking more about our future, that we are going to run out of space to throw our trash. So I believe he becomes more serious. So examples that I found for evidence in that in purple, in the beginning, when he says, next to saving stuff I don't need, the thing I like to do best is throw it away. That's funny because it's, it's the complete opposite. Next to saving everything, I like to throw everything away. So he was using a little bit of humor there. So that would show tone because my answer says that he is funny and humorous in the beginning. All right. Another example that I found down here where he was, this, in my opinion, this is where he switches. when he switches, now as the population explodes and people take up more room on the earth, there's less room for everything else. All right, that's a pretty strong statement. So now I know he's not trying to be funny anymore. I definitely can see him taking a very serious turn. Down below, also serious when he talks about how poison is going to kill all of us and all living things. That's pretty serious, right? And then a lot here. Anytime you talk about poison for miles and miles and miles around, that's pretty serious. And as I go down, then he switches right here. I hope you guys caught that. You should be proud of yourself if you did. He switches right here and he becomes sarcastic again. If you're a little valley outside of town and you have to be careful, or first thing you know, you'll be getting filled, because he talks about he doesn't really understand the word landfill. So he was kind of being funny there, as well as the end. The best solution for all of us to do is pack our stuff up and move to Mars. And then at the end, he's like, we won't be there long either because we'll probably trash Mars. So he ends with being, in my opinion, sarcastic. So he does a lot of, he starts off, in my opinion, he starts off funny, then he gets serious, and then he gets funny again at the end. It's kind of an interesting way to do it. But that's why he's winning Emmy Awards, and that's why he is a credible author that you hopefully explained here underneath speaker. He is not biased, and he is definitely reliable, okay? He's credible. Okay, so those, and your answers might have been similar, hopefully close to that. But that will be your first time going over the answers to your first soapstone. So if at any time you need to fast forward, rewind, if you need to see, I'm going to try and get this, I'm going to get it just so maybe if you needed to pause it, you can see where my answers are. Okay, so if you want to pause it here to add or change any answers, that would be a good idea. And you are done with your first soapstone. Nice work.